We're here.
Hello, all.
Hello.
Welcome, Wednesday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
And and you are?
You guys.
I feel like it should be, and you are. So
hit that like button and share it, gentlemen.
Our original intent was to show our interview with Representative Newman from 8 to 8:30. That was our original plan. However, we, as you know,
got a little tech improved,
right? But we are still somewhat challenged. So we did figure out how to do it, and we will actually run it after our interview with Harvey and John. So, right?
Yes.
So we did speak with the Congresswoman this morning, and she was lovely.
Lovely lady.
She was lovely.
And again, not one of the things that we really, and again, we could do a quick debrief before Harvey and John enter the studio. But one of the things that really stood out is that she spoke like you. She doesn't seek the spotlight.
No.
And she talks about representing her constituents.
Right.
And recognizing the fact that her district happens to be fairly conservative.
It is. It's a conservative blue.
Yes.
She's a conservative blue district.
But the beautiful thing about it is that you wouldn't know or care that it's a conservative blue. Why? Because she's not bought and paid for by corporate special interests.
Yes, she's lovely.
And so much of the things that we're fighting for, we find that the whole thing about labels, progressive, moderate, conservative, it doesn't mean anything.
Well, and it's not serving us.
No.
But what I did learn is that she is definitely the go-to person when you want to talk about like transportation and light rail, because apparently she's on the transportation committee.
And listen, at the end of the day, we cannot control the fact that, yes, he's still Mayor Pete, is going to have the say that he has in politics. But if Marie is able to have a relationship with him and get billions in transportation funds to her state, more power to her, because she is a huge advocate for high-speed rail, which is something that we are huge advocates for.
So anyways, guys, if you don't want to stay on tonight necessarily and watch it, it will, of course, be up, up tomorrow, probably be up even after tonight. It'll just be there. It'll be there where it'll be there.
Well, the interview will air approximately 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. So that will be that will be important. We're going to do news and amuse, but we're going to do it with John and Harvey.
But I don't know that we'll see how that goes, because there's a couple of kind of out there stories, but are they people to talk about the Laura Ingraham story with?
Well, come on. I mean, how could you not? I mean, that's so fun and so silly.
I just can't.
How could you not? I mean, again, you can really think about whether or not she's, all there, and the fact that she just kept going and going.
What's upsetting is that this is what it's a comedy routine that it's sort of passing as some sort of information source. And the fact that this person is in that high of a profile in terms of media and putting out information, and is yet so obtuse, is like, where is Edward R. Murrow or Walter Cronkite? Like this woman, oh my God. All I can think of,
how bad media has actually
all I could think of when I saw that clip was who's on first. She's just, it's mind-boggling. Boggles the mind. And I did, of course, compliment Congresswoman Newman about her grace and decorum in maintaining her, the wherewithal about her while being across the hall from Marjorie Taylor Greene, posting her transphobic nonsense outside of her office just to hurt Marie Newman. Like, so purposeful. It's so purposeful, like such showmanship. But yeah, and I've always said that is a woman that has just never properly had her ass kicked. Like, everybody at some point in their life sort of needs to be put in their place. And she is just so glaringly in need of that. She would not have done well where I grew up. So you just she would not have done well.
As we said when we spoke to her today, the thing about Representative Greene is that she doesn't take her job seriously.
No.
And that's a big problem.
No.
That, more than any other reason, is why she has to deal with her in a way that you wouldn't normally want to deal with somebody. But again, that's the thing about certain members of Congress. They are not there to represent us, and that's a big problem. And so naturally we're we're looking at it from the perspective of, what can we do to improve? And, even Marie said, we are not in a situation where, everybody's going to be primaried. You have to be strategic in terms of how you, go about doing
we
that.
say this all the time. It's not something that everybody takes into consideration, though.
Marie also supports the statewide approach to getting Medicare for all.
I would think that anybody in Congress who supports Medicare for all would support any approach to get Medicare for all.
Pramila Jayapal doesn't support whole Washington.
Why? That's very interesting.
Because eventually you learn who's in the way and who's actually trying to help. And that's what we're trying to figure out. Who's trying to help and who's in the way. So Mr. John Shelton's already in the studio. We're just waiting for Harvey. So it's going to be a fun conversation because, again,
you guys, this book, and it really, like, when I see something like Make America Radical Again, it really reminds me of like my parents from the good old days. But anyway, this is Harvey's book. It's called Take Hold of Our History, Make America Radical Again. And it's actually a composition of different speeches and essays and articles that have been written it seems to go back like to early 2000s.
I've wanted to have this conversation because I think that we don't talk enough about Wisconsin.
All the way back to Thomas Paine.
Yes. Well, Thomas Paine's the man.
It starts it all.
Yes.
Okay.
But we don't talk enough about Wisconsin and its amazing history in terms of radical politics. Remember, the Socialist Party has actually won the Electoral College vote in Wisconsin before. So that just goes to show you what type of a trajectory the state has had now that the state has become extremely libertarian. And that, of course, has a lot to do with the Koch brothers. But that doesn't mean that positive change isn't on the horizon.
And of course, this is a very pro-labor.
Yes.
Bit of reading, which another thing in Wisconsin is the labor is strong there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that, to me, is where the rubber meets the road. In fact, I was speaking with somebody the other day who agrees. He's at the University of Wisconsin, and he said that he really does agree with this idea that progressives and libertarians actually have a lot more in common than they don't. It's a question of how you find that common ground. And I think when you're in an upper Midwestern state, that's probably, it's more rural, and even the cities are not substantial in size. I mean, Milwaukee's somewhat, of a big city, but Green Bay, Madison, those are small cities.
My only experience really in Wisconsin was going to concerts when I lived in Chicago. Like if there was actually a good Billy Joel, Elton John face-to-face tour that was in Milwaukee, and so we drove for that.
Well, I haven't been to Wisconsin yet, but I would like to go. And I guess this conversation
I'm going to go to Door County. That's where I want to go.
Door County?
Door County.
Door County.
Like a door. Yes.
County?
Door County.
Good
That's
enough.
Where I need to go.
Well, these two gentlemen are professors at the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. And I have no doubt that they're Packer fans. So
well, I could already see there's gear involved here. I could see a hat.
Well,
I'm a Dolphins fan, so I have no hostility in any of this. I have no horse in your race.
Well, I'm a Giants fan, so of course you're not going to like me because two of the greatest moments I've experienced as a football fan happened at Lambeau Field. So with that said, Harvey, Kaye,
all about
John
sports.
Shelton, welcome to Generational Change, gentlemen.
John's got his hat on.
I figured I would sort of ham it up Wisconsin tonight, so I think we're prepared.
That's all good. It's all about sports to him. So any chance for any sports reference, he'll go there.
Well, regardless of what people think of Aaron Rodgers' choices, he certainly is as look, you can make the argument he's even better than Brett Favre. So it's amazing how spoiled you Northern Wisconsinites have been, but you cherish every moment of it. And from everybody who's ever shared with me their experience of going to Lambeau Field, it has been nothing short of amazing. The pleasantries and the warm welcome of your, of the fans is great. Being a Giants fan, I have always heard good things about you guys, and football's life. But of course, that's my intro pleasantry.
Does Jen know the ownership arrangement of the Green Bay Packers?
No,
you don't know that.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Why? What's the deal?
And you know what? Considering the wonderful state of Wisconsin and the fact that you do have that progressive, radical, history, please, whoever would like to share, What is so unique about the Green Bay Packers that no other team in the NFL has?
The Green Bay Packers are the only fan-owned professional sports team in the United States. It is not owned by a family or a single capitalist. It's a non-dividend paying stock that you can buy into. In fact, just this week, they issued additional shares of stock as a money fundraising kind of thing. So as one New York Times, I think it might be 20 years or longer ago, wrote in with a bold headline, "Socialism is alive and well in Green Bay, Wisconsin."
That's awesome. I've always been pleased that our stadium, which is now called Hard Rock Stadium, but to me, it'll always be Joe Robbie Stadium, was at the time the only stadium that was built by a private person. And everywhere else I've lived, they've taken it from taxpayers to build stadiums for games that nobody can afford to go to. So that always kind of bothered me as we get into talking about labor.
I think it's a great segue, gentlemen, because one of the reasons that we've been really hoping to have this conversation is obviously the fact that the history of Wisconsin is as progressive radical as can possibly get. Most would not associate that today because of the libertarian stronghold it has become, especially with the influx of all of the Koch brothers money. But if you can talk about sort of the history of Wisconsin, a state that has gone to the Socialist Party in the Electoral College in previous presidential years. It's been a long time, but the history is there. And whoever would like to start sharing some of that history, that'd be awesome.
I'll actually, John, maybe you want to start off.
No, go ahead.
Okay, well, the first thing to understand is that in sort of ethnic terms, Wisconsin is settled by Scandinavians and Germans. The Scandinavians predominated in the western part of the state, the more rural part of the state, but they did bring a kind of, proto-social democratic ideal with them. Here in the eastern part of the state, and probably throughout as the majority of newcomers, were the Germans and later German Americans. And they came especially after the revolution of 1848, which failed in Germany. And they brought with them a kind of a radical labor and once again, social democratic kind of politics. So, for example, the city of Milwaukee for a good part of the 20th century had socialist mayors. Okay, all the way through into the 60s. That's the first thing. And this was also the state, which in many ways was the capital P progressive state earlier in the century. The La Follette family, Robert La Follette, Bob La Follette Jr., really did lead the sort of progressive ideal here. It was so progressive as a movement, which had emerged from the Republican Party, because the Republican Party was so tied into corporate enterprise itself, and basically Robert La Follette Sr. Was just outraged by the corruption, but was so enticing to FDR that in the mid-1930s, FDR actually turned his back on the Wisconsin Democrats and embraced the progressives. I think there was a 36 race. And then it's also notable, which makes the tragedy of the Walker years, which began in 2011. We were the first state where the legislature fully granted public employees collective bargaining rights, which we lost in 2011 with the Republican takeover of the legislature and the Walker, governor's administration. Add to that, John. What else?
Yeah. So, one thing I would add to that is our history of, you kind of touched on it, but labor radicalism. So, that some of those German radicals, lots of socialists, lots of anarchists in Milwaukee, probably some of the people listening to this know about the fight for the 8-hour movement in 1886 that led to Haymarket Square. But actually, Milwaukee was an enormous epicenter of the 8-hour workday. The workers shut down the entire city. This wealthy industrialist, basically, worked with the governor to call in the the militia, and basically like fire on strikers, killing seven workers. Harvey and I are both board members of the Wisconsin Labor History Society. We commemorate that every year. But that's kind of the backstory, actually, for those socialist mayors, is that kind of impulse that really made Milwaukee a working class socialist city in the early 20th century. And, that continues into the 1930s. So, Harvey, I know we'll bring this up if we talk long enough, but huge amounts of labor militants in Wisconsin in the 1930s, in particular at Kohler. There's a strike that comes in the wake of the FDR administration's.
We should keep this in mind every time you flush a toilet, by the way.
Yeah, right. While that strike is happening, the state, led by a Democratic governor, instead of sending in the militia to crush the strikers, and this is the New Deal moment, actually protects the strikers. And then, Harvey's written about this, but FDR comes to Green Bay actually in 1934, and literally while the militia is protecting the strikers, and basically kind of says, you know what, these selfish people that don't want to, be part of extending workers' rights, they're a big part of the problem in this country. And the other thing I would say about the public employee law that Harvey mentioned is that came from public employees organizing, right? Part of it was, obviously the legislature had to make the votes, but we had a very militant public sector labor force in the 1950s that were pushing for that to happen. So that's the tradition in our state. But Wisconsin also has this. It has a strange politics, because this is also the state that elected McCarthy, and that kind of opened the door to Walkerism and the Koch brothers, as you noted before. So we do have these kind of dueling traditions in our state. It's a fascinating place to live.
So what are you seeing now? Like when you look at that history, because I feel like right now there's so many labor strikes going on. They're all around. They're everywhere. Like I think we're at a high that we've been in, I don't even know how long. It's not getting mainstream media coverage, mind you, but yet it's happening all over the place. So what is going on there as far as that? Like, are you noticing any of this recent wave of labor movement?
Well, one thing I would say is I think we are seeing some big strikes right now, but actually, this historically, this really isn't like a huge wave of workers in terms of the number of workers who are on strike. There's some really high profile strikes, and I think at a moment when working people are clearly pissed off with the inequality that exists in this country. You have a lot of conflicts that are, I think, what makes them stand out, like John Deere and Kellogg's, for example, is just how militant they are, right? Like that they're not willing to take the first contract. It's actually the rank and file that are driving these strikes. And so I think I would say we're more on kind of maybe the very beginning of a wave of maybe more strikes. And I would actually connect them. We kind of had a pause in the worker militants in this country, but, I would remind people that in, 2017, 18, 19, we had this wave of teacher strikes. And so actually 2018 was the year that we had the most workers on strike in this country since the 1980s. So, that didn't go away, right? COVID happened, and, I think everybody kind of hunkered down for a little bit. But I think what we're seeing is a resurgence of that now, particularly in the private sector. And we haven't had any big labor conflicts, of the scale that we've seen other places in Wisconsin. But I think it's very likely that they could be coming, because this is happening everywhere.
Yeah, and I would remind everyone, and not John or you folks necessarily, but anyone listening, that when Walker and the Republicans put into place Act 10, which took away collective bargaining rights for public employees, that 100,000 plus Wisconsinites turned out in Madison. And to put it bluntly, we occupied the state capitol. It was nothing violent, very peaceful. And in fact, it was a real Wisconsin nice kind of takeover. And the graduate students at Madison, who were part of the original sort of public employees collective bargaining struggles, throughout the 70s and up until that time, they actually led the strike. And I was there one weekend, and it was just extraordinary. The Capitol was just filled. In some ways, this current set of strikes, which is not getting enough attention in the media. I mean, it's all but ignored really in the media. I mean, it's like almost a conspiracy of silence right now. Well, similarly, in 2011, there was essentially, in the wake of that, there was something of a conspiracy of silence because Occupy, which captured the public's imagination and the time on the air, sort of seemed to overwhelm what had happened just the previous spring. And I can tell you, I'm a little bit of, I grew up in New York, but I'm a bit of a Wisconsin chauvinist these days, not just for the Packers. The Wisconsin Rising actually should be the thing that people on the left embrace, because it was a classic case of labor and its allies, really turning out. I mean, seriously, over a number of weekends in the tens and if not more than 100,000. And we've just sort of left us. And the more, if you like, anarchist version of the protests of that year in Occupy, I'm not denying their significance, but in fact, it's just literally blinded people to the fact that labor began that radical democratic year. Now, both moments of this is what democracy looked like essentially failed. Okay. But it was an indication that after 45 years, well, 40 years then, but 45 years, if not 50 years of class war on working people, that working people were prepared to step up and fight back. And the tragedy at that moment, really the tragedy is the fact that Obama, who ran claiming he was the friend of labor and he would put on his marching shoes if workers were out on strike, okay, or needed his assistance, which was metaphorical for we'll be there, don't worry, utterly turned his back on the occupation, on the Wisconsin Rising. He didn't turn out in Wisconsin. Michelle didn't come to Wisconsin. I don't believe the Secretary of Labor ever stepped foot in the state. The only folks of renown were decidedly not Democratic politicians, but rather Ed Schultz, who, by the way, not long after ended up losing his job on MSNBC for his support. I'm convinced it was an anti-labor firing that took place. Michael Moore came out to support us. But it's just amazing that this sort of suppression of memory, but really 45 years. I mean, we're essentially at 50 years of class war on working people and labor. They have gone out of their way, not only to suppress voting rights all these years, not only to try to strip women of their control of their own bodies, but literally over and over again have sought to, bust unions, take back pensions, create two-tier wage systems, everything they could to deny labor a voice and clearly a memory, a public memory.
We're speaking with Harvey Kaye and John Shelton of the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. The book is Make America Radical Again, Take Hold of Your History. And I do think that this is an important point that you made, Harvey, is that Wisconsin, to me, is one of the most glaring examples of how neoliberalism has completely changed the dynamic of politics in this country. And as you alluded to, 2008 happens, Obama becomes president, and within 2 years, the Koch brothers' favorite son, Scott Walker, becomes the governor of Wisconsin. If you can elaborate on what that sort of 2-year period was like to how we led to one of the absolute worst governors we've ever seen. And that's not being hyperbolic. That's how bad Scott Walker really was.
Yeah.
And how that whole transformation came about from such a progressive state to such a hard right state.
It's all Obama's fault.
He never.
Let's put it this way. And I promise to answer that question, but let's put it this way. And by the way, I do want to point out, in the very vein of our conversation, John brought out a couple of years ago a really great book entitled Teacher Strike, which goes back equally as I do to find the roots of all this in the 1970s. Johnny, maybe you should hold that up. Yeah.
Always have your merch ready.
Always.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Well, gosh, I forgot what specifically I was going to say, but in response to your question, there really was a sense in the 2008 campaign, Obama's campaign in 2008, that this would be the resurrection of FDR and the New Deal, right? I mean, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember, but the magazines that had, whether they were conservative magazines like National Review or progressive magazines like The Nation and others, they all had on their covers, "Are we going to see a new Deal?" And they even had Obama decked out.
Time magazine.
Yes, right. Decked out as if he was FDR, you know, with the hat and the cigarette on the stick and the whole thing. And Obama himself, speaking of neoliberalism, stood in a line of presidents. Look, Jimmy Carter was the first he's the father of neoliberalism, Jimmy Carter. Okay. The campaigns in the 80s were marked by that exact kind of politics. Bill Clinton was the champion neoliberal, joined by Hillary, obviously. Okay. And Obama it's like, you know, Carter, Clinton, Obama. There you go. Well, so Obama becomes president and people's expectations were really high. And you have to imagine that whether we're talking about union halls or university classrooms, people were ready to go to bat for a progressive set of initiatives. They were really expecting action. And what did we find? Well, first of all, we saw the Obama administration decide that there was only one question they were going to address, and that was the healthcare question, which of course they pursued, frankly, in a rather neoliberal fashion. Okay, they cut their deals with big pharma and the health insurance industry. In fact, the most telling thing is that Obama did what Clinton did back in the 80s. Basically, he negotiated with two senators. Okay, I mean, sorry, let me go back. Clinton, more importantly, to start with, Clinton appointed Hillary to run the healthcare commission back in the 80s, which was a secret healthcare commission during which time the Republicans and Capitol mobilized. And I said at the time, this will cost us healthcare for 20 years. Well, then Obama comes in, you know, promising the return to that very question. And what do we get? We get Obamacare, which, by the way,
Romney care. It's Romney care.
Yeah, Romney care, right. And I can tell you that when it went before the Supreme Court, I was absolutely convinced the Supreme Court was going to find it unconstitutional. Frankly, I think it was an unconstitutional act. Okay, however, because national health care associated to Social Security would have been constitutional. But I don't know when before in the history of the United States, the Congress passes a law which essentially requires people to buy a private commodity from private corporations. Okay. So I didn't expect it. Well, anyhow, besides the fact that he didn't even imagine the possibility of something like Medicare for all, he creates Obamacare, which compounds the crisis, except for two things. It lifts the age at, you know, as we know, to 28 or 26, where young people can stay in their parents' plans. And also, of course, it covers pre-existing conditions, right? Those things, for those reasons, what I would never wish to see anything but advances on Obamacare rather than its elimination. But it is the case that in every single way, Obama repeats the Clinton years, essentially. He turns his back on labor. By the way, Clinton turned his back on labor because the question was whether or not we would see the revival of the labor movement. And hell, it was labor and the environmental movement which basically put Clinton in office. And he turned his back on them.
He negotiated NAFTA.
What's that?
NAFTA.
Oh, sorry, good. I should be clear about
Normal
it. NAFTA.
trade relations with China.
Right, NAFTA. So then with Obama, of course, we see, well, we almost saw the TPP, right? The Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Not for lack of trying.
Not for lack of trying. We were rescued by Trump. I can't believe I even said that. But if you think about it, the Obama years had raised people's expectations and dashed them one by one, over and over again. So here in Wisconsin, you've got this 2008 to 2010 period. Here in Wisconsin, the Republicans just went to war against labor. And what did they do? Well, for a start, they promoted this idea that public employees were essentially a spoiled class of workers. okay, because of the benefits and the wages. And they divided the labor movement in many ways between the classic private sector versus public sector. And Scott Walker never actually ran on the fact that he would pursue the breaking up of the labor movement in the state, but it was quickly the case that they were going to smash it through. And by the way, within a couple of years after Act 10 that stripped public employees of their collective bargaining rights, they turned the state into a full-scale right-to-work state, in other words, which...
That's
there
us.
it is. There it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I used to, for about 10 years, from 2006 to 2016, I used to go down to Sarasota every year because there's a progressive veterans group in Sarasota called Veterans for Common Sense in honor of Thomas Paine's revolutionary pamphlet. And so, since Thomas Paine was my hero and I've written quite a bit about him, they invited me to come down and speak. And over again, this is almost embarrassing to report this, I was lamenting their state. I mean, they got cheated, right? They cost the whole country an election. You know, we know
hanging
2000.
chads. They were
Yeah.
hanging chads.
Yeah, and you know, I felt for my comrades who were constantly having to fight a battle that they had little chance of winning. And then it turns out that we became Florida of the North.
Yeah.
That's
Can
unfortunate.
Can I add something real quick to what Harvey was
Go
just
for it,
talking
John.
about? Because I remember in 2008, and I've written about this recently, and I don't know if y'all remember this, but Obama, you know, when he was running in the primary against Clinton, he gave a speech in Janesville. It was in February of 2008. And in the speech, he basically said, for too long, you working people have, I mean, this was to GM workers, you know, and the plant would close a couple of years after that. And he said, for too long, you've been the victims of bad trade deals. You've been the victims of a Washington, D.C. that doesn't care about you. You've been, you know, the victims of unresponsive politics. And Hillary Clinton is offering you. He actually criticizes Hillary Clinton for offering, you know, essentially the private healthcare plan that then became Obamacare, and said, you know, I'm going to do things differently. And he even said, I know you've been promised these things before, and I know that you're tired of hearing these promises, but you can bet that I'm going to do things differently because I have a background in community activism. And I remember watching this speech, and I remember at the time thinking, like, this is my guy. This guy is a progressive. This guy is a social democrat. I backed him in that election. And then he comes into office, you know, economic crisis, does very little, right? And then, you know, as Harvey pointed out, like a sort of a corporate healthcare plan, you know, does nothing to hold Wall Street accountable for wrecking our economy. And Walker completely exploited that, right? He completely exploited the fact that a lot of working Wisconsinites had basically felt like they'd been promised things and never delivered on by Democrats, right? So when Walker's running for governor in 2010, he talks about this company called Mercury Marine, which at that point was looking to get, you know, huge tax subsidies to keep its facilities in Wisconsin. It's in Fond du Lac, right, which is, you know, about, I don't know, 80 miles from us, Harvey, 100 miles.
Yeah, 80 miles, good.
And he says, if I'm governor, Mercury Marine will never think about leaving because I'm going to create the kind of business climate that will save everybody's jobs. And after decades of Democrats, basically, this is on YouTube. Can I say bullshit? Well,
Yeah.
You know, hearing these bullshit excuses like Clinton, you know, NAFTA's going to create all these great jobs for you and you're going to get retrained. And then Obama coming in and saying, I'm going to do things differently, and then not doing them differently. You know, you can see how a lot of working people said, you know what, in 2010, maybe I don't vote, or maybe I vote for the Republican to do things differently. So those things are definitely connected. And, you know, it's really just a shame because the sort of lofty aspirations, I think, of Obama really did play a huge role in this shift toward a very reactionary Republican.
Yeah, I want to, and building off of what you just said, John, I mean, it's interesting to consider that not since the early 1970s has the working class as a whole seen a rise in their income, share of the national income, and basically their standard of living. And it's amazing how people constantly, I mean, intellectuals are the worst case of this, say to themselves, well, how the working class vote for Republicans? How can they vote against their own interests? Well, they're utterly missing the point. The point is that nobody gets to vote on their wages, right? So if your pocketbook, if your wallet, if your bank account, if your capacity to take care of your family is under siege because the bosses are smashing your union, creating two-tier wage groups. I mean, if they're going to go after your pension, if all of this, if you're literally experiencing a class war at the collective and individual level, and then some politician comes along and says, you know what, we're going to lower your taxes. Well, since you can't vote on your wages, you sure as hell are going to vote to lower your taxes, even if the rich are going to benefit far more. So really, I mean, that's what we've seen for all of these years. And it got to the point where working people said, well, why vote for a Democrat? They make promises and they lie. And moreover, they're in the same camp as the Republicans when it comes to capital. But at least with the Republicans, they're going to cut our taxes.
Yeah, we always talk about that here, that we don't have a labor party in this country. We have two corporate parties, and one just happens to be pro-choice. But basically, there is no labor party in this country. So when people talk about starting a third party, I feel like we really don't have a second. We have two management class parties. So I get it. I totally understand why people are, done with the Democrats and frustrated with them and just wanting to try anything else. And Trump ran on a populist message. He didn't do any of those things, but he ran on a populist message, like getting rid of the TPP and ending the wars, and a very pro-labor message.
He did. Listen, it's the one thing he did do that was significant in his presidency. He did end the TPP. And, it's very interesting because history is repeating itself right now. You're seeing it right now. And what's scary is that it's happening a lot sooner than most people would anticipate or normally happens through the cycle of politics. We're only just over a decade removed from watching this movie. We're seeing it happen again right now. And what I'm noticing, as I'm sure you guys are noticing, is it's not going to be the same this time around. A lot of people are saying, you fooled me once with Obama. You're not fooling me again now. Yeah, we may have had to do what we had to do to get Trump out of office, but we are sick of this. We are sick of our government being completely captured by corporate special interests. And you're not going to convince us to keep going down this same path. How do you guys foresee things changing? Because it seems almost completely transparent at this point that we're heading for a red wave that could make the Tea Party wave of 2010 seem pale in comparison.
Oh, the Dems are going to get their clocks clean in 22. Yeah. It's going to be brutal.
And then I guess the follow-up question to that is, what path are we going to take? Are they going to learn anything from this? Probably not. So what is our best path forward? We see what's happening with that movement for the People's Party. We see what Andrew Yang is doing with the Forward Party. I mean, people are desperate for something else. And right now, we're just kind of grasping at straws, desperate for any direction that might make sense.
I don't mean to disappoint you, but I don't favor I don't believe a third party effort is worth the effort. Sure. Okay. I just don't. But I can tell you, and here's the sad part of the story, because you and I do agree that things are speeding up in a way. Well, this is strange. I got to hold on 1 second. I have to, for some reason, the plug on my computer disconnected today.
All right.
And, take your time.
We've had our own tech problems.
I'll say something while Harvey's figuring that out.
Yeah.
Jen, I want to go back to something you said a second ago, which is that, we don't have a labor party in this country. And I don't know if Harvey would agree with me, but I bet he would. From the 1930s through the early 1970s, it's about the closest we've come as a country to actually having a labor party.
Right.
And the reason for that is because labor was pretty pivotal in those big political shifts that took place from the 30s through the 60s. I mean, organized labor was at the center of American politics, right? I mean, in many ways that probably your listeners don't, hear or don't think about, but like the March on Washington probably doesn't happen. I mean, first of all, it doesn't happen with Philip Randolph, who comes out of the labor movement, but it also probably doesn't happen without Walter Reuther and the UAW, bankrolling and doing a lot of the organizing support. So every big sort of political, accomplishment in the 50s and 60s happens, with organized labor kind of backing it. So I think this is where Harvey was going. I'll turn it back over to him in a second, but I'm not in favor of a third party either. I think what we have to do is change the Democratic Party to be one that actually supports the needs of workers. I actually, in spite of I think you're right, of what's going to happen, I think there are some really positive developments. First of all, the Bernie Sanders wing of the party has shifted the direction tremendously. I mean, the fact that he's the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, the fact that he won every county in Wisconsin in 2016 during that primary, every county except one, I think. And the fact that, the Democratic Party has put forward the PRO Act, which is the most significant labor reform in this country, probably since the 1930s, actually. Yeah. It's significant. Now, we're not all the way there because, you still don't have enough commitment. And Harvey can talk more about this if he wants, I know, but, whether Biden actually supports getting rid of the filibuster is, that's a huge question, I think, because I'd like to see him putting pressure on people because we need to pass a law like that now. But the fact that we're seriously considering that, I mean, what we got during the Obama years was the Employee Free Choice Act, which was very weak tea, and it didn't even get to a vote. The PRO Act has passed the House. So, I think we are moving in a positive direction, but obviously there's still a lot of the old guard sort of corporate Democrat resistance.
Yeah, I mean, we're in that sense, we're at this really pivotal moment. Okay, the anxiety about what might happen after 2022 is not. It's no fantasy. It's a nightmare that is on the verge of happening.
Yes,
but it is the case that the PRO Act would radically transform the labor question in this country. A Voting Rights Act would once again restore people's rights and capacities to vote to what it was supposed to be in the wake of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. There's nothing to indicate that Biden is willing to push on those two things by way of getting rid of the filibuster. But seriously speaking, right now, I can only hope that the folks who are in the labor movement, who are the progressives, and I think most especially Sarah Nelson and the folks in her camp, really do have to start challenging, threatening this administration to get into gear on making these reforms possible. FDR, everyone thinks of FDR and they think about the American Rescue Plan that Biden, turned into law back in February, I guess it was. Well, I said at that time, this is great. People said, is this going to be the beginning of a new FDR years? And I said, well, it's a great start, the American Rescue Plan. But there were 4 dimensions to FDR's New Deal. And one of the dimensions was relief, and that's the American Rescue Plan, at least for this past 9 months and 10 months. The next thing is the question of recovery. And basically, the infrastructure plan and the Build Back Better, which is already whittled down, right, is 1.75 if we're lucky.
Build Back slightly better.
Over 10 years?
Yeah, over 10 years. I mean, I wish they... Yeah, even when it was 3.5 trillion, they could have said it's 350 billion a year. It's not like 3.5 trillion. And I mean, this is why you have to wonder what, look, the Democratic leadership is either out to screw us or utterly incapable of doing anything. I mean, it's one or the other, or both. Well, maybe both. Well, anyhow, so a third, so recovery is essential. And reconstruction, and these 2 bills would be a matter of recovery and reconstruction. But there's a 4th dimension, and that is the one which we're now talking about, and that is reform, okay, which in fact in the 30s, people just take so much for granted, was actually almost revolutionary in character. It utterly changed the relationship between government and the common people, the citizenry, changed the relationship. It empowered workers by way of the 1935 National Labor Relations Act. It launched social democracy by way of the Social Security Act, and then the Fair Labor Standards Act, which empowered working people all the more, basically by establishing the 8-hour day and the 5-day work week, and 40 hours in the 44 originally, and then 40. I mean, people just have to remember that didn't happen only because of FDR. It happened because FDR was encouraging of working people to get organized. Then he empowered them to get organized, and he basically wanted to be pushed. And the problem is that Biden has done nothing to encourage grassroots, working class action. I think the Democratic Party today, what distinguishes it from the best years of the party, the years from the 30s, well, the 1930s specifically, is that FDR was not afraid of his fellow citizens. These Democrats are afraid of their fellow citizens. And let me just add, this is long overdue. I congratulate you, even though you didn't beat her, Jen. Okay. We need more people primarying, because that's the only way to take back this party. And I want to say there are people in state legislatures around the country, young women and men, who are beginning to transform from the bottom up the Democratic parties at the state level. And by the way, that's what the Republicans did.
Yep.
They did the long haul struggle. Well, I hope we have the opportunity to pursue that long haul struggle.
We talk about that here all the time, that one of the things that the Republicans get right is their strategy at really building their local base and their local party infrastructure and working through that. Whereas Democrats come out every couple of years for a major election and then they go back to hiding. Our entire progressive movement down here basically stalled when Bernie dropped out in 20. That was it. They were like, I relate to when the Dead stopped touring and a bunch of people didn't know where to go. So some people followed Fish, but you had a bunch of people that just had nowhere to go. That was our Bernie people progressive. They just have nowhere to, they're wandering aimlessly in the desert.
You know,
in the county where we live, those people actually took over the leadership of the local Democratic Party. We just had an election last year. So that's happening here, and that's partially what Harvey's talking about, I think.
Yeah,
we try to have reasonable perspective because, as you guys know, we are one of the worst states in the country.
Our DEC hasn't made quorum in like 5 years.
And that's
it's been like 5 years they haven't made quorum.
And that's one of the things about, Wasserman Schultz leading the party in the state is that it is a rudderless ship. It's not just her. You have a lot of people who've been in office for over 30 years.
Yeah.
You have literally Charlie Crist, who probably will get the nomination for governor again, and the guy's a Republican.
He wants to get beaten up. He wants to get rolled over by DeSantis.
To the credit of a state house representative, Michelle Rayner, who is in the Tampa Bay area, not too far from Sarasota, where her district laps over. She is running for Congress, but she even said nobody is beating DeSantis next year. And so the fact that she has that perspective already, recognizing that as much as you want to say that it is a red wave, it's just the fact that the Democratic Party is completely rudderless at this point. They're trying to more or less just stave off this inevitable takeover, because you're right. The night is darkest just before the dawn. Things are always going to get worse before they get better. That's why right now, the last remnants of what's happening, it's almost like they want to go for broke. Yeah, we know we're going to get crushed next year. So let's give the billionaires and the millionaires another massive tax break in our next bill, because hell, we're screwed anyway. So we might as well make our donors happy. I mean, at this point, it just seems to be so transparent what they're doing. But
you can't make this stuff
up. Tell me how you feel. Let me know how you feel.
You can't make this stuff up.
Well, but I do think you're right. I think that we spoke with Marie Newman earlier today. I think there really is this yearning to have more non-corporate representation in the Democratic Party. And even though it's not happening nearly as quickly as we'd like.
And certainly not here.
No,
we will be underwater literally before I really think that we'll get anywhere with that. But the head of our state Democratic Party is a Republican. So the hope, literally, really, and so it's we have a long road.
And the last thing I'll mention is the fact that a lot of these things, are happening, but they're happening much more out in the open now. It's like, Pelosi is the master of ceremonies at a billionaire daughter's, oil wedding the other day. And it's like,
oh yeah, right.
They're not hiding anymore. They're like, all right, look, this is who we are. So it is what it is. And, we're not out yet. But time is, while time is of the essence, the issues and what we're fighting for is definitely on the side of the non-corporate movement. And if you guys can, elaborate on that, because again, I do think that Bernie's movement is still alive and well. It's not where it should be in terms of direction. But even an issue like the PRO Act, if we were able to pass legislation like that, that would eliminate the right to work laws, I mean, there's no telling how big the progressive movement can grow. But we definitely need more people, as you alluded to, Harvey, to step up like Jen did and run for office. A lot of people, may not necessarily want to. It's a question of, do they have to?
I'm going to tell you something that John is probably a little reserved at this moment to tell you. So, in last go around, that would have been 2020. John's wife, Christina, who had already been serving on the Green Bay School Board, decided she would run for state representative, and she primaried at the state level, the state representative here, and won. And she's, believe me, very much a progressive. Well, Christina, can I tell the story, John? I hope you don't.
Yeah, but I want to say one thing first. We were recently at an event where we were both speaking, and she told everybody there that the proudest moment in her life was getting endorsed by Bernie Sanders. And I'm like, come on, I'm right here.
Well, listen, John.
The proudest moment of my life, John, was hiring you some years ago.
All right, okay, that makes me feel better.
John, I am very sorry that I didn't give you enough attention, but believe me, I will do that. I'll do that favor for you, and I am very, very much appreciative what you did.
That's a pretty
that
good
was
moment.
Really good, by the way. Congratulations.
He does a few really good ones.
I got the mask too.
Well,
yeah.
What name should I drop to him to license you to go with? Tell me who else you'd like to do, and I'll drop.
He does. He does.
Well, I just want you to know that NAFTA may not have been good for you.
You know what?
That's a damn good Clinton. That's a
voice that grates on me no end.
Yeah.
God.
Well, believe me, if you think you've seen it all, you've seen nothing yet. We're coming back. We are totally coming back.
You're going to make America great again.
What I told everybody, I said it on this podcast before, and I'll say it again.
Yes, you did.
Right now. We will make America great again. So you'll be seeing me very soon.
Well, before we get too hysterical about that, so John and Christina, whenever we get to dinner, would always hear me, probably more than I should have, recount my exasperation with some of the Democrats here in Wisconsin. One in particular was a friend of ours, because I had been pushing him for 20 years to raise the question of a Wisconsin economic bill of rights, following on the FDR idea proposed in 1944, which Bernie himself would eventually would pick up. And after, I didn't even know she was going to do it, but she wins office and she lines up with Francesca Hong, another new state representative from the Madison area. And they composed with, I'm sure with John's assistance and with my mentoring, a Wisconsin Economic Justice Bill of Rights. And the interesting thing is they launched it, and so far they're getting a very favorable response within the Democratic caucuses in the Assembly and in the Senate. Now, what that tells me, and I've been working with other state level politicians around the country, is that there is this real aspiration to make history, and to do so by grabbing hold of the best of the past. If you want to quote Lincoln, the better angels of our nature. And the fact is that do we have time to make all of this happen? That's where this has become so important. It doesn't take much to take over your county Democratic Party. As you were pointing out, you said they didn't make quorum. They
never do.
Okay. And I will also say that John was instrumental in our movement to take over the county party here in Northeast Wisconsin. This could happen everywhere. And the fact is that also then, look, we may lose some billionaires along the way, but the billionaires have done nothing but give us the likes of Bill Clinton, followed by Hillary Clinton. One basically, blocking real progressive change, and the other one literally costing us an election where we could have won. There's no doubt. I'd be surprised if any of you would disagree with me. Bernie Sanders would have won in 2016.
Absolutely.
Americans were asked what kind of change they wanted in a major national survey, and they overwhelmingly, the great majority said radical, and that's the word they endorsed. But in their minds, radical change was either Bernie or, in a kind of reactionary form, Trump. And don't forget Trump. Did we not mention Trump ran, as you're right, as a populist? Okay.
Yep.
Pointed his fingers at the biggest elements in capital. Well, Bernie could easily have won that election year, easily. And I mean, the Clintons cost us a social democratic America, period.
I think the big thing is that the Democrat, neither party, as Trump showed us, actually, is monolithic. And so what we need, I mean, what you think about what the Republicans did for all those years when they were out of Congress, right? Which was pretty much, from 1948 until the 1990s. They were on the sidelines, but they organized, right? And they tried to kept hammering messages, and they had their own vision about lower taxes, and less government. And then, when they were able to win power in 94, I mean, obviously this was a, slightly different breed of Republicans, but the Contract with America folks, they were ready to rock. And, I think what we have to do, I mean, the idea of a third party is interesting, but in my view, like there's just too much working against it, the way things are set up. And so the great thing about the opportunity, I should say, is that it really isn't monolithic. And what we need are for people to run for these offices, even if they think there's a very small chance that they're going to win, and elevate these kinds of ideas, these kinds of big ideas. And, I fully subscribe to Harvey's newsletter, embracing American history and the progressive changes, and the past that has democratized our society. Americans want to see, they want to see that. They want to be proud of it. And the right they're mobilizing history. We have to mobilize the democratic struggles that have, led to, really important changes over the years, and be proud of them. And I think that's how we do it. We've got to craft Harvey, I know, agrees with this, because I'm probably paraphrasing him. We need a vision and a narrative. And what needs to happen is more people need to run for office and actually talk to the people who are voters and get that out there. But it's not like that was always going to be the limit with Bernie, right? He's one figure. He's not a savior. We have to have more people on board with this, making this argument and coming up through the grassroots. And I think it is happening, but we need more people to do it.
Speaking with Harvey Kaye and John Shelton of the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. I think it's also very important to talk about the power of corporate media. We obviously talk about the biggest obstacle of our time is corporate special interest money in our political arena, but there is no question, and quite frankly, I think this is somewhat of a bigger problem on the Democratic side, because the statistics bear it out in terms of what percentage of people trust corporate media, and it is somewhat overwhelming on the Democratic side. Now, granted, I'm sure that's a generational factor in many ways, but it is still a major problem nonetheless. And we saw that, Harvey, with the vote splits between Bernie and Hillary. And obviously it was fairly pronounced as well with Bernie and Biden in terms of who was, what age demographic was voting for Bernie and which age demographic was voting for Hillary and Biden. Do you see that as also being a major obstacle we still need to overcome, and what we can do to deal with that?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, all you have to do is say mainstream media, commercial media, and one immediately knows what we're talking about. Okay, I mean, Fox is the house, media of the right, okay. And there are any number of further right venues, but look, MSNBC is the warmed over neoconservative, neoliberal Democratic channel, network, right? MSNBC. CNN is just literally a corporate voice. And if people don't, I assume people watching this or listening to this agree with us, but we've got to get other people to realize just what happens after Virginia on that Tuesday evening. Immediately, the folks who showed up, the talking heads were talking about somehow the progressive agenda was costing them, that it was somehow the education plans, or it was the social democratic arguments. I mean, James Carville, when is he going to retire?
He's paid too much. Have you seen that house that he lives in on the Potomac in Alexandria? Come on, that don't pay for it. That ain't cheap. But
Right.
you know,
I mean,
but the one thing that I think that the progressives should be running on is the fact that that McAuliffe did lose Virginia and Murphy won New Jersey, and he won New Jersey on a very progressive platform. I actually was at the Bernie rally right before the election, and there's no question. And Bernie did not go to Virginia to campaign for McAuliffe. So to me, I thought it was very distinct between those two races.
Look, I said along the way, John and I would basically confess to each other, did we care if McAuliffe won? Who cared? I mean, seriously speaking, did we care if McAuliffe won? Because if he won, the Clinton machine would literally have celebrated and talked about where they were going to go next. Okay. Was that a bad confession to make?
No, you're perfectly safe on this platform.
Oh, I mean, this is the big concern I have is, that the Democrats realize that they have absolutely nobody for 24. They have nobody. And then you hear these sort of rumblings of.
Wait a minute. You mean you don't think Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg don't make a great ticket?
Let me. The fact
I'm salivating as we speak, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be brutal. Like, I think that will be a brutal slashing. But I think that they know it. I think that ultimately they don't care if there's a Republican in the White House. People like Nancy Pelosi love that. They get to have Mick resistance and do a lot of fundraising and blame everything on the big bad Republican. And so it's much safer for them, but they're not putting up any fight because Kamala and Pete have, I mean, that's ridiculous. She didn't win a single primary. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, right. She's a loser. I mean, call it that. She's a loser. And that, in fact, I've been saying for 9 months, where is she? When they sent her to talk to the Central Americans and Mexicans, I guess they just never brought her back.
Yeah, she to me is really like one step like Dan Quayle. She's got like a little hint of Dan Quayle to her. Like there's just not a whole lot going on there, just sort of like going through the motions.
Yeah, but at least Dan Quayle could entertain you a bit.
That's true. Potato with an E.
Right.
That's true.
But it almost makes you wonder, especially now that it's pretty obvious again. The MO at this point, how they operate, and that they are giving so much of this power to Pete because they know that he's going to run, and it's very likely he's going to run in 24. So now the question becomes, is there going to be an opportunity? I was thinking we're going to be waiting until 2028, but maybe if Kamala and Buttigieg really do go at it, that kind of opens up a lane for a new progressive voice.
Who would that be?
But who's out there?
Ask me in 6 months, and I may have the answer to that.
Well, again, I know we would love to say that it would be Bernie, but I don't say. Listen, it took Reagan 3 shots. Let's remember our history. It did take. Well, remember how long it took me to become president, so you never know. I don't think it's going to be Bernie. If it is,
no, I don't either. But I do. I think there are some young folks out there. And I think you're right, Jen. I think if it's Buttigieg versus Harris in a primary kind of setting as it emerges, there will be, I guarantee it, another candidate. I can't speak yet though.
Now I'm really curious. I mean,
you'll have to bring me back. That's all I can
all
tell
right,
you.
because now I'm really curious.
Yeah,
I'd like to be hopeful.
Let me go back to the question of the media. I have this. I've been thinking about this for years, and I say it quite often. Maybe this is as much a fantasy as a third party effort, but this goes back to when I used to be on my friend Michael Brooks' show, and I used to say to him, there is a vast emerging alternative media online, a left alternative media, and the fact is that part of the problem is that it's too much a battle among one or another faction on the left.
Oh,
okay. I mean, really,
we eat our own. We eat our own.
We do. I mean, we eat our own heroes of the past, and we eat our own possibilities in the present. And if right now it's hard to say there's a left. Okay, there are lefts, you might say. So, but it does seem to me that there is this especially powerful young voices such as yourselves, that somehow we have to cultivate this on a national scale as if it was a network. Okay. Like in the old days of television networks. And, I'm not saying that there ought to be orders that come out of some central place. Let's make this the talking point of the week. But it wouldn't be the worst idea to have talking points that progressives and socialists and others were making in some kind of, not choral-like way, but in some kind of solidarity, I think. So, that's the fantasy I've got, maybe.
Yeah, well, that's like our dream too. But the problem is that there's so many egos involved, unfortunately, and people just can't get along on the left. And we see it with content creators. There's content creators whose sole content is talking about other content creators. And basically and the algorithm supports it. And all they want to do is get into this drama with each other and all this stuff. What it did for me was I'm not on social media anymore. I've gone off now. It's been like 10 months now that I haven't been on social media because it's just toxic. It's just toxic. Like, I don't need that kind of brain poison. And the left is in such a little echo chamber. And they feel like they're so powerful, but they spend so much time criticizing and cutting down other people for not doing it exactly how they think it should be done.
And that's something
and they're not coming together on key issues. And this is that's why we are big proponents of labor, not party, labor. And that's going to be I think the unifying factor.
And that's why Sarah Nelson's voice is so important, because she really gets it and she really sells it extremely well, because a non-corporate, nonpartisan labor movement is how you bring in the widest swath of people who are not interested in the drama. They're just interested in the results. And that's really what we are focused on. Like, that is our primary concern. And that's why, just reading about Thomas Paine and, just the history of the labor movement, it really is the great unifier. And I think that's really what, you hit on the head, Harvey, and, John as well. There is no question that if we're ever going to get out of our own way, that this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it where there is a meeting ground of the Bernie voter and, frankly, the Trump voter, where it isn't about, the divide and conquer strategy, the wedge issues that really separate us. It's there is a ruling class that is destroying us hand over fist every day.
Yeah.
And unless we work together collectively, we're going to hell in a handbasket. I mean, we're all already kind of there. It's just a question when the bottom falls out and, what we're going to do going forward.
We have a question.
It's hard
we don't have to like fantasize about this. We have a history in Wisconsin that speaks specifically to this. So Harvey knows this, but we recently had our Wisconsin Labor History Society conference, and it was keynoted by Naomi Williams, who is an awesome historian at Rutgers, writing a book about the history of interracial organizing in Racine in southern Wisconsin. And one of the things that made labor so strong in Racine is they actually had a labor publication called Racine Labor that from the 1950s into the 90s, I think, right, Harvey?
Yes.
Right. That reached not just in Racine to all the unions there, but there were people in other parts of the state basically saying, like, when am I going to get my copy of Racine Labor? And so it did exactly what you're talking about, right? It helped working people to structure their news consumption and their sense of solidarity and allegiances and understanding that it really is us against the bosses. And that was a pivotal part of the construction of a strong labor movement there. And it will be to any progressive movement, that progressive resurgence in this country. Labor will be essential, and figuring out, I don't know how to do it, I'm not a media person, but figuring out how labor media can be central to that it's vital. It's absolutely vital.
It's one of the things we're trying to do. I mean, we have Uplifting Labor series, and we are regularly bringing on labor leaders and going to labor rallies. And I mean, I think that's one of the biggest parts of what we're doing, is sort of trying to build a network and bring all different organizations together, like almost like building a spider web. I always see it like that. And every time I make a new link, it just makes it stronger. But yeah, I mean, we're just doing that. And I do appreciate, Harvey, that you refer to us as young people, because I'm not a particularly young person. But he is.
Sort of.
I'm 42.
I don't know.
42, and Harvey still calls me his young friend, and I'm like, that's nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I turned 50 this
No,
year.
you didn't. It's okay. That's the new year. No, you didn't.
I'm close to you, John. I'm 38. But I really think that this has been an extremely important conversation. And, again, it speaks to the future and the importance of the labor movement, because if Jen is going to run against Wasserman Schultz again, it is going to come down to the labor movement.
We need a couple more locals that are willing to stand up to our AFL-CIO boss, who is figuratively in bed with Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah, his name is
that simple.
That's true in too many parts of the country, and it really is. You got the locals can make the difference. That's really what it comes down to.
That's what we're pushing.
One of the most important unions that you could possibly have, not going to say which one it is, but all I can tell you is that the head of that union 100% supports her, acknowledged that he not only voted for her, but got his wife and his family to do it as well, but recognizes the limitations right now that are currently in place. And one of the reasons, Harvey, as you know, is the right to work laws. A lot of people in the labor movement are not going to get out of line if they do not think that there's any type of a safety net when it comes to their job. And that is a very big problem in states like Wisconsin and Florida. But the more we build this labor movement, the more I think we could overwhelm them. Whether or not we get the PRO Act or not, this to me really speaks to where our future is headed. And as I'm sure you gentlemen would agree, any final thoughts, anything that you're working on, anything you want to plug? And obviously,
thank you. Take hold of our history, please. Everyone should pick up a copy, whether from a library or a bookstore, and John's book, Teacher Strike. But I do want to say something. John and I are not just academics, okay? We are longtime labor unionists, American Federation of Teachers. John is a vice president of the AFT here in Wisconsin. He basically, I can tell you this, there are locals that are now larger than they were before Act 10. And I have to say, in good part, that's because of John's energies.
Yeah, thank you.
We need to get you to come down here.
I would love that. Maybe like January, February. I was
going to say we do have better weather during certain times of year for you.
Well, you're gonna have to do that based on how far the Packers go. So that's where a lot.
I draw a line at those cheese hats. I do not care for the
I'm with you.
hats.
Absolutely.
Well,
no cheese.
Here's my thing. I'm embarrassed to admit this. I was at the game on Sunday. It was about 35 degrees. That's about as cold as I go. Like, so
that's lightweight actually for your part of town.
I know, but like
December. Well, wait a minute. You should know that John grew up much of his time in Mississippi.
That's true.
Oh, okay. I mean, I have lived in cold places because I went to undergrad in Colorado and I've lived in Chicago. So I do know cold. But standing out in a game and when it's time to leave when you no longer can feel up to your knees. Like the feet being numb isn't the issue. It's when it gets really far up the leg that it's time to go.
I have a feeling, John, that if we finally get Brady versus Rodgers in the divisional round, or dare I say the NFC Championship game, you are going to find your way to Lambeau Field one way or the other. That's my opinion. That's where I stand. You'll make the exception if that game finally happens.
If that happens, you and I will talk. We'll see who is right.
There you go.
He'd probably go anywhere for a game.
I love sports. It's and we talk about labor being the great unifier. Sports is also a great
but sports is also kind of elite because most people in the world can't afford to go see sports.
But you know what?
It's a unifier unless your quarterback doesn't get vaccinated.
Wait.
Well,
yeah. Wait, I'm going to this is a subject for another occasion, but I'm going to plant it in your minds. Once upon a time when all young men were subject to the draft and vast numbers of them, especially during the generation called the greatest generation, they learned about solidarity in trenches, in tanks, and in planes. And we don't want that to be the basis for that it occurs on. But that met the need then to create an even stronger labor movement when they came back. They understood what solidarity was. The problem today is we actually do not have, other than high school sports, and that's for men and women. That's young men and women. That's the only place where young people actually get to experience solidarity. And that is a problem. And we really ought to be thinking about how to overcome that, which leads me, then I'll also say that national service may be the alternative.
I love that. I think that, you know what, I've always thought, Well, yeah, I mean, it could be called anything. I mean, I don't care what you call it, but the concept of civil service, I think, is really a good idea. I think that's something that we should absolutely be having, especially when you have people that are graduating with undergraduate degrees that can't even get a job for $15 an hour. I mean, it's like there's just got to be a better way to rotate people through productive parts of what we need.
No, there was a great part of Doris Kearns Goodwin's book about leadership in times of crisis, and talking about how LBJ was part of FDR's Peace Corps and doing the local stuff. We are going to be doing multiple volunteer events here for Thanksgiving.
Don't toot your horn. Everyone comes out to volunteer for Thanksgiving.
but we are doing the best.
But we actually do year round. I'm just saying, but like normally just Thanksgiving is when
you guys are like a married couple. You must be the same age.
No, we're a working.
I appreciate that because we have been in situations where people have thought he was my son.
Oh, bullshit.
You can laugh all you
want.
No
way. No way.
Oh, yes. You'd have to go back to canvassing in August, no makeup, schwitzing like crazy, like just totally disgusting. And him wearing his baseball hat on backwards and sunglasses and standing there with like a packet of ballots. I could see it.
Well, I would do it again for you.
And thank you. And actually, my son doesn't look that totally different. Just a lot younger.
Fair enough.
A lot younger.
Harvey, Kaye, John Shelton, make America radical again.
Take hold of our history. Make America radical again.
We're totally making America radical
Go.
again. Believe me.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And
thank you. You guys are blessed.
A lot of fun.
Definitely speak with you again really soon.
Thanks,
Great.
guys.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
Good night, gentlemen. That was a lot of fun.
I always say the thing. I always go, they were lovely. No, it was great. Hello. But you know what? And I always love the labor talk. I always find that fascinating. It was one of my favorite things in law school. I ended up taking a whole bunch of labor courses. I actually reached out to the great Professor John Teeter and asked if he would come on our show. And he can't. He's like dealing with some family stuff right now and just isn't able to prioritize it, which I get. But learning labor from him was the best.
Kayla, just want to thank you for your amazing super chat contributions this evening.
Yes, and we were going to address the Sheila issue.
Yes, and we will. Look, the MPP, unfortunately, MPP is essentially a rudderless ship in a lot of ways.
And it's really one faction.
It is. And again, we agree. I mean, when you think about it, Nina Turner, Marianne Williamson, Chris Hedges, Dr. Cornell West, they did an amazing job.
But then what?
Great group. And then
nothing. And that's because really there's nobody at the forefront pushing it that is really going to draw enough people. And it's also not a broad enough, it's not.
And I hate to say it, but there was also a major problem with money.
Yes. And how it's being financed.
How it was being financed and who was spending it. That's a problem.
But Kayla, we will say this. We will most definitely have Sheila on again. I messaged her the other day saying, congratulations, Madam Congresswoman. And she was very pleased. We could we could get her on as soon as it's convenient for her. As soon as
when the dust settles.
Yeah.
Now, and she also does have another election.
She has an election in January.
She is going to win. But, you never take anything for granted. Never.
But it's definitely she's definitely on the down slope of the fight at this point. It should be a lot smoother, easier, less stressful. She still has a general election, but less stressful.
So before we get to our final segment of the evening, well, actually,
what do you want to do?
What we should put on the interview, see how it flows, and then we could talk about it after the fact. That would be the better.
Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. But then I'm coming on really late again to then do news and amuse.
Oh, go grab a bite. There's going to be a 25-minute interview.
Well, but then wait, no. But then we're not going to come back on. I don't know that we can get back into this stream. Can we get back into this stream? Like, how does that work? Yeah. I really think we shouldn't do it that way.
All right. So here's how.
Oh, I see. You're going to share. Okay.
So as you guys know, we spoke with Congresswoman Marie Newman earlier today.
She was lovely.
Lovely lady. And you know what? A lot of people don't know that because she's not a spotlight seeker. She's not a member of the squad.
She's just a regular person, just trying to do the best she can to help the most amount of people.
But like the squad, she is a representative who does not take corporate special interest money. And so we had a very substantive conversation, one that, for those of you who are in the statewide Medicare for all single payer healthcare movement, you have another congressional representative who came on our podcast and said, I support statewide initiatives for universal healthcare. That was great.
This is the second time in like a few days that unless it was the same person who said, somebody said that on the last stream.
How do you do, fellow kids?
It's the eyes. He's got big eyes. Is that what it is?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Never know.
But yeah, we will definitely get Sheila back on, guys. So what we're going to do is this is our first time really, I think, doing this.
Hopefully the second time. But it's been a while.
But
so hopefully we won't
we're going to share an interview with Marie Newman, and then we'll come back and do some news and amuse.
Jody, that wasn't a cigarette. Let's leave it at that. Smoke if you got them.
I was a cigarette smoker. I was a cigarette smoker until November 2nd, 2008. November 2nd, 2008 was my last cigarette.
Gee, I wonder what happened on November 2nd, 2008.
Nothing other than it was my last cigarette.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought that was the election day. I don't know why.
It might have been, but that had nothing to do with it. That was the day. I don't know
why.
I
can pretend it had something to do with me.
It had nothing to do with you. It was more about my kids.
Well, Obama doesn't like to be blamed, but he does like to take credit. That's for sure. All right. So without further ado, here comes the interview. Let's make sure we get this baby right. We are going
You got to stop that.
Stop that.
Share.
And here we go. We hope you enjoy, guys.
Okay. We are recording.
We are live.
Well,
sort of.
Hopefully, I didn't delete the most important broadcasts or ones that haven't been done yet, because don't hate me if that happens. So
please bring into the studio. She is the congressional representative of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District. You know her as a primary champion, but that is just the appetizer because she has to do it again. Now running in Illinois' new 6th Congressional District. Marie Newman, welcome to Generational Change.
Well, thank you for having me. So pleased to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for putting up with our nonsense prior to being recorded. As Peter just said, there has been redistricting. I'm assuming that Illinois got an additional seat. We have here in Florida as well. And if you could talk, let's start with talking about that issue right there and how that's affecting, where you are.
Right. So we actually lost an electoral vote. We lost about 8,000 people in the census from 2010 to 2020. So obviously we lost an electoral vote. That always wreaks havoc in any state, right? We're a very blue state for the most part, but then that just creates challenges. So what effectively happened is that the silver lining in our redistricting story is that we were able to create a Latino influence group that's getting closer to be a VRA district. So that's the silver lining. I was the only one that was an advocate for, by the way, in the delegation. With that, that created a sheer geography issue where there was too many members of Congress for the numbers of spots, right? So they ended up double bunking Congressman Sean Casten and I. Currently, Congressman Casten has the western suburbs, and then I have the southwest portion of the city out to the southwestern suburbs. So they took about 50% of my district and smooshed it together. It's a technical term with about 20% of Casten's district to build a brand new district called the New Illinois 6th, of which we are both running in now.
Huh. That's
So it isn't technically a primary challenger against an incumbent. These are two incumbents challenging one seat.
Yeah, it's a new district and two incumbents running. So that's the best way to describe it, because it's a brand new district.
Right. And it just happens to be where you are. It's not that you moved to someone's district to challenge somebody else. That's something that
here's the extra fun twist, because Illinois is filled with all kinds of fun twists at the end of the day, is that we went through a series of maps like you do in a redistricting process. And the final one had Sean and I double bumped at literally the 11th hour, about an hour before the legislators went to the floor to vote on the map. I was moved one block out of my district, the New Illinois 6, because apparently somebody didn't want to run against me. And so I then said, well, it's still 50% of my old district. It's my district, basically. I am going to run for re-election in my home district.
Yeah, that
Speaking-
makes the most sense.
We're speaking with Congresswoman Marie Newman of Illinois' 3rd Congressional District. You know, one of the major issues that's obviously been of hot debate on Capitol Hill, but as it is, you know, at the state level, Illinois is a very blue state. Florida, where we are, is a very red state.
Yeah.
You know, gerrymandering is a very serious problem. And the way these districts get cut up, it's done deliberately so that, and it works both ways on both sides in regards to, you know, the long-term incumbents are typically very well protected. And obviously yourself being a new representative, can you talk about some of the challenges that a non-corporate representative like you faces when it comes to, even in a blue state, issues like gerrymandering and now being, you know, put in the situation that you're in? Because we see that throughout Florida when it comes to having, you know, 27, what will now be 28 congressional districts here in the Sunshine State. Maybe 5 of them are competitive. The rest are completely protected. And, you know, it doesn't allow for accountability for the representatives.
Yeah. Well, gerrymandering in general is a bad idea. I'm a fan of fair maps and independent commissions. And they said, let's be honest, that creates a whole new set of problems that are challenging, but it also makes things more fair. I think that, you know, our voting systems and infrastructure, as well as our districting mechanism, should be bipartisan or nonpartisan. But we are where we are, right? So it is a huge challenge here in Illinois because we are a blue state, and you know, the Democrats are just as guilty as the Republicans, and we all continue to do it unless we do develop these fair. That's why I'm a fan of S1 and House 1. The For the People Act is that it creates fairness and ends gerrymandering and makes sure that our electoral infrastructure is very fair.
And as somebody who did challenge a longtime Democratic incumbent, you know, it obviously speaks volumes. Jen, as you know, ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You know of obviously a lot of other representatives. You know, not too far away from, you know, geographically speaking, you're very close to, you know, if we're being honest, I mean, Cori Bush is literally right down the road, you know, so we do know of a lot of, you know, non-corporate challengers. That's the term that we really like to focus on. You know, a lot of times people like to pigeonhole the whole idea that you're progressive, you're moderate. To us, it's all about, do you take that corporate special interest money or do you not?
Yeah.
And what has been, from your perspective, obviously first term, you know, one thing we were not able to talk about with Representative Ro Khanna that we would love to hear from you about is, you know, what's it like, you know, a day in the life of a congressional representative on Capitol Hill? You know, what
that's not entrenched, you know,
Yeah.
that's not in the inner circle. Like, what's that like? Because I think it would be like Sisyphean. So yeah.
Well, 2 things. One is I am a big fan of that. First and foremost, doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, Green Party, whatever you are, you have to be in alignment with your district. And sometimes that means we have more conservative Democrats in spots because it's a conservative Democrat district, and nobody wants to understand that. But so there are members of Congress right now that are more conservative potentially than I am that are in the Democratic Party. But guess what? They actually are they are reflecting their district. And as much as I would like them to vote progressively on some things, they are reflecting their district. And I think that's one thing that we all have to accept as non-corporate politicians and candidates is that let's do it for the right reasons. Let's make sure that our votes are being swayed by voters and not corporations, right? And so I just want to be clear on that note, because I don't believe every primary makes sense. Mine did because he just wasn't reflecting the district in any way, shape, or form. And there are others that did as well. So just wanted to lay that groundwork. In terms of a day on the Hill, different than a day in the district, I like to call myself a district congressperson because I like to solve on the ground problems like, you know, the climate crisis has created inordinate flooding and great drama and trauma in my district, quite literally. People are losing their homes. They are going bankrupt from flooding and a number of things. So we're working on addressing stormwater, not the sexiest thing in the world, right? Postal delays are dramatic. So I have been working at the federal level with the oversight committee as well as at the local level to reduce postal delays, and we've been effective. And you know why? Because I convened everybody together. And then, things like idling, train idling, we have to reduce emissions. And so at the very granular level, we have to stop that. So in the district, I'm just on the ground all the time, working on district problems. On the Hill, I would say that I'm very entrenched in the Small Business Committee and the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Interestingly, those are the two most important committees that are solving the economy right now. It just really is. And so I've been thrilled to do that work. I'm a former small business person and done consulting in transportation equity and healthcare equity. So those are the things that are really exciting to me. And throughout the day, it's usually a series of meetings. I vote. I try to attend as many lectures and sit-in learning sessions as I can. But a lot of it is running around from meeting to meeting, making sure you understand the issue fully, and talking to others. Because remember, we have to sell our ideas internally too. So visiting with other members whom I don't know everybody yet. And it's a lot of work. So,
Yeah.
But my absolute honor and pleasure, I will tell you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, what you said in the beginning, because this is something that we on our show, we're nonpartisan and we don't like labels. We're more about just dealing with just policies and issues. And I say it all the time, like for people that I have that are Republican friends, if they're properly representing their constituents, they're doing their job.
Yeah.
And I totally agree. And none of that even remotely bothers me. I only care when they're responding to certain corporations, certain PACs, certain things that are kind of nefarious and actually working against the people in the district. That's when, to me, someone is not representing. But yeah, no, I'm good with some of the conservative peeps. We have no problems there.
And you obviously segued into one of the most important topics we want to cover. You mentioned transportation. We are huge proponents of high-speed rail. Lord knows the state of Florida could really use it if we had a situation.
We need help.
Well, that's also the thing about Illinois. The capital is in the middle of the state versus not the north end of the state. And so in Florida, it's even worse. It's all the way up in the panhandle versus, quite frankly, Orlando should be our capital. So if we did have high-speed rail, that would make a huge difference. And of course, the infrastructure bill passed. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of bad. But what we would like to hear is, obviously, I believe it's about 17 to 19 billion that's going to be allocated for the state of Illinois. How is that going to benefit your constituents and the state as a whole? And is high-speed rail a project that you've been trying to work on?
So high-speed rail is a forever project of mine. That didn't start with me being in Congress. So I've been looking at high-speed rail for probably 10 years. And we have some good examples. We have a lot of great examples in Europe, right? They're already doing it well. It is reducing emissions dramatically, and it is creating faster, cleaner, safer transit. Interestingly, here in Illinois, we have a couple of spots which it would be fairly easy to create a thoroughfare high-speed rail. Some of it would be intended to get to allow folks to get to the airport more readily. To your point, getting to and from downstate would be a lot better with high-speed rail. And there would be less cars on the road, because ideally my goal is not only to get to that 20, 30, 50% reduced emissions, but it's the how, right? And the best thing we can do is get everybody on rail or build high-speed rail, or better, both, right? So here in the Chicago area, I'm a huge fan of building shorter high-speed rail along with high-speed rail longer distance. So my ideal would be to have a Amtrak high-speed rail that goes from Washington to Seattle with stops along the way, right? But there's also an idea around the Midwest that would create this corridor between Ohio and Chicago, where there would be high-speed rail back and forth, because we have a significant amount of traffic that goes through our area in the Midwest that way, to and fro. So that would create some, so those are some of the test projects. In fact, I had Secretary Buttigieg out, when was it? Probably 3 months ago now. And we specifically talked about the importance of using Chicago as a high-speed rail test market. we are the center of the nation. We are the hub. I have more lines of track in my district than any other district in the nation. And we are the nexus of 2 airports, as well as all of this rail. About 1 in every 4 rail cars comes through my district every day. So we're the perfect place to do things like high-speed rail. And we are hopeful that that $17 billion we're receiving will include a high-speed rail project. We're all pitching that. I mean, our senators are working on it, and I believe the delegation is. So we're fighting for that.
I'm just chomping at the bit. I wish we had a representative that would fight for that for us. We can't even get the train to go from West Palm Beach to Orlando. We can't even get the Bright Line train to extend that far here. It's just sad.
I am sure Representative Newman is well aware of the Florida delegation and all its problems, but we digress.
Yeah, no, and I wanted to say, so I lived in Chicago for a little less than 2 years, a long time ago when I was at Northwestern. And of all the places I've lived there the shortest, and yet it's my favorite. And I don't completely know why. I'm a Florida person, and the cold is definitely harsh, but to say the least. But I don't know. There is something about it there. It has like the best of everything. It's like it really is. It's the best of everything. And I think that I always say that it has to be that cold there, otherwise everyone would live there. And the fact that you guys lost a congressional, it makes me, in my mind, I'm thinking, that's the place to go, because there's too many people here. Like I want to go in the opposite direction of where everyone seems to be going.
Well,
but
I say this back to climate change, right? Is that we are going in the Midwest, and particularly Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Ohio. We are going to be the gem states, as I would call them, is in that we have fresh water. We're the only ones that have just tons and tons of access to fresh water, right? We know Lake Powell and Lake Mead are going to dry up in the next 10 to 20 years, right? So the Southwest and the West have huge problems, right? And we also know that all of the southern states that have seen a migration of people there are starting to realize, wow, the catastrophic climate-driven weather is really a problem and very expensive, and creating inequities across everything from race to income to healthcare to everything, housing. So the climate crisis is not a small thing. We have to really start thinking about this in all that we do. I'm a big fan of whatever we talk about, whatever policy we're talking about, embed a climate crisis action. So my team and I always look at everything through a greener economy and equity, no matter what we're doing. And don't do it if it doesn't address those.
I think that's great. You know what? It's the holistic approach to policy, which is what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we have in getting things done, is everything is separate. You know, like housing is here and transportation is here. And yet all of these things are connected. And it's right. And so I really appreciate that you're working in it that way.
And Congresswoman, from your perspective, what would you say is going to be the biggest roadblocks to the projects you alluded to in the Chicago area and throughout the state?
Yeah, I mean, well, there is a provision in the Infrastructure Act that requires a fix it first perspective. So those things that are in most dire need get fixed first. So that's actually, it's only a pragmatic issue that would prevent us from doing that. Now, remember too, that it doesn't prevent us from doing these things. It's, it's a resource problem for sure, and we can start these things and continue to appropriate monies over time, federally, state, municipality, and county-wide. One of the things I'm a big fan of is looking, okay, what can be done as a starting point, and then who can we work with in the whole of government to continue into the next phases of a large transportation project. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to fix it first, roads and bridges that have huge issues, get those done first, address high-speed rail, and address the climate crisis from a housing and transportation perspective. And we're on it. I mean, everybody's engaged.
So this just made me think of something. I know you're familiar with the building collapse that happened over the summer down here in Surfside. And one of the things, obviously, is that it is based on the saltwater erosion and eroding the concrete. And these are problems that are well beyond the affordability for people that live in these buildings. So this is the problem. Like at our state level, everybody's now running around trying to impose legislation that will force the associations to act on the repairs. Yeah. I'm all for it. Let's say they want to do that. They don't have the money. They just don't have the money. And you're looking at people that are living in a 1-bedroom condo that maybe they've had for 25 years. They probably have no mortgage. They can't afford a $300,000 assessment to their unit. So I look at like all of the beach and all these areas are going to be empty. It's going to be like a ghost town. And I feel like Chicken Little, but I'm like, these guys cannot afford it. This is going to require like a federal I mean, the state can't even deal with it. I mean, the insurance company, so how do we deal with this?
Yeah, I'm certainly not as acclimated to your issue there, but based on what you've described I think that this is a whole of government situation in every single state, is that it is incumbent upon members of Congress and senators to convene state legislators as well as county officials and to figure out the engineering and prevention mechanism first. I imagine your folks along all those beach fronts engaging engineers and public works officials to make sure what can we do right away to secure some of these buildings in its underpinnings, right? And all of their foundational elements. I'm sure they're working furiously on that. So that has to be done. But as part of FEMA money and EMA money and all of the other climate crisis money, those are the projects that should be addressed first, because safety is number one. Safety is always number one. But maybe as we do that, we can walk and chew gum at the same time and be adding more greener materials to all of those kind of reinforcements as we go. So I'm hoping that's how your state is addressing it. But nationally, that's what I say has to happen in every state and then nationally.
Yeah,
we don't call ourselves Florida for nothing. So unfortunately,
we've got some issues. I mean, look, I look at people that are running around and saying, yeah, we need to fix it. But then on the other hand, they don't stop building and developing. They just don't stop. It's like they haven't brought our current infrastructure up to date with the current population and they just don't stop developing. Yeah. And so I look at that and I wonder how this isn't going to end well. Right. I mean, it's just not going to end well.
It's incumbent upon your state officials to put a moratorium on it till we figure out. It's not that we're stopping economic development. It's that we're temporarily readjusting to make those projects move forward first.
Right. What is wrong with saying we're having a moratorium on non-essential development? Why is that so complicated?
Because Florida is its own animal. I'm sure that is something that most people know. We are definitely.
You can't drink money, and when we start running out of fresh water down here because of overdevelopment, which is happening, this is what I keep saying. They could keep building, but there's not going to be enough fresh water for everybody. So that could be a problem.
Everyone's going to be in Illinois. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, that's why we encourage people like you to run, Jen. That's the whole point. And
I would very happily move back into my little old apartment in Evanston on Greenwood.
Oh, nice.
Well, there you go up there and help the Congresswoman make sure that she wins election in District 6. So there you might have an opportunity to make a little trip on that. So one of the last things we do want to touch upon, because obviously people get extremely frustrated with the lack of movement on Capitol Hill. Goes without saying. We are very strong advocates, as you are, for Medicare for all. We know that it is not going to, it's not going to pass on Capitol Hill without some type of an outward movement of immense momentum. And one of the things that has been happening is they have been developing a lot of momentum at the state level. There is the New York Health Act, which is garnering momentum. There is CalCare in California, which Representative Khanna supports. And then, of course, you also have Whole Washington. There are these state-based organizations. I don't know of one in Illinois. There probably is. I'm not familiar with it. But a lot of these state-based organizations are really starting to focus on this idea of maybe we do need to pass this at the state level. That's how it worked for marriage equality. That's how it's working for cannabis. we're guessing that this is probably, and as you know, being in Illinois, that's how they passed it in our neighbors to the north. They passed it in Saskatchewan first, and then eventually they moved it all throughout Canada. I'm guessing that that's probably how we're going to have to do it here in the States. How do you feel about that?
I'm actually a fan of that. And here, look, there's a bunch of different ways to skin this cat. So during my campaign and here in Congress, while we've gotten sidetracked a little bit by these bigger packages, I'm a fan of rolling out pieces at a time. So it's the same principle. So I'm a former management consultant, and I like rolling out portions of plans or programs, testing them, making them better, rolling out, and piece by piece, right? So I've always said, let's do Medicare for all over time and roll it out in pieces so that we can course correct and make it better and keep rolling it out as we go along. So we could do it that way nationally, right? Or we could roll it out state by state, and we could do the same thing. We could roll it out in pieces within the state structures and keep going that way. Either of those and both of them could work. And I'm a fan of both. In fact, last night in our Progressive Caucus meeting, I had the same, or actually 2 nights ago, we had the same discussion. It's like, okay, we're going to get Build Back Better done likely this week. We need to turn our attention back to healthcare inequity, 100%, and really be on that issue as a priority. So we're hoping we can get back to that business soon. And both of those ideas, I think, are workable, and they take time, but that's how we do it in the U.S.
Yeah, nothing happens very quickly. It's like watching paint dry.
Sometimes.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Another federal congressional representative who says if you can get it through the states first, do it. So
yeah. Well, it's you do what you get, do what works to help the most people in the best amount of time you can. I mean, that's the whole point. One thing I did want to tell you, and we're not going to go there in any way. I'm just going to tell you that I really admire your graciousness in dealing with certain people. Okay. Like I really, really do. And I just would say that I don't know that I have that capability. So I just want to say, like, very, very grateful that there's people like you.
The Congresswoman that you share office space with across the hall, the simplest way I would put it is she does not take her job seriously. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people on the Hill who do not take their job seriously. She just makes it infinitely worse because she craves the spotlight. And that is not why you were elected. That's not why you're on Capitol Hill. We greatly admire the fact that not only are you a great representative, but you are somebody who only gets to the spotlight when it's absolutely necessary. Because this is a very important job, and again, as Representative Khanna, said on our show, this is one of the most privileged positions that you could be in, in the world. Yeah. And to treat the job as anything other than that is a horrific miscarriage of justice. And the fact that the Congresswoman from Georgia decided to
see, you're getting more specific than you'd be. I think that Congresswoman Newman understands what I'm saying, and that is not. I don't think I would be so tame if somebody was disrespectful about my family.
That's for sure.
Well, you know what I mean. You do have a job to do here, and I think you're both right. Is that let's focus on what we have to get done and move on. My mom has a saying: "Move up, on, and over across bullies." Right. Just go right past them. And so that's what we did. And this is a very serious job, and you have to take it seriously. And I don't think she is. That said, I am. And so I have spent all my time worrying about that and not about her.
That's awesome. I think that's great. As you should.
Yes, we cannot thank you enough for coming on the podcast today. What is your website? How can people get involved and assisting your campaign? This is grassroots all the way, so we want to provide any assistance we can.
Well, right now we are redoing the campaign side website, but it is marienewmanforcongress.com. It should be up in a couple days, but you can go to all of our social media, right? All you do is type me into Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and I'll pop up all of my positions and all of that. So hop on all of our social media, and you'll keep abreast of what we're doing. And my marienewmanforcongress.com website should be ready to go for the new campaign. Yay, go team. And can't wait to get started.
We know you're a busy lady. You have to get back to the Hill. Have a very happy Thanksgiving and
Thank
happy
you
holiday
so much.
season.
You
And
too.
we will see you
Have a
soon.
great day, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Hold on, let me. You got to and share like
I
here.
think that's
No, go here and stop screen. That's it. Now go back to share screen and get up the other one for the slides.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay.
And we are back. So
We are
guys,
back.
that was our interview this morning with the Congresswoman, and I thought she was just lovely.
She was. And again, this is the thing about having representatives who aren't always in the spotlight. In a way, that's really what we need.
That was kind of cool having a little bit of an intermission because I
Yes.
had to call my parents and have a little chat. So that was kind of nice. Go to Google Slides.
No. Yes.
You're so challenged right now.
I'm not. I'm getting back into the flow. So as you guys know, we do news and amuse. And boy, I actually thought we would do news and amuse with
I don't
with
love
Harvey and
doing that
John.
only because I feel like when we're having certain it depends on who the guest is. Like if it's just another content creator and we're just sitting around shooting the shit, that's fine. But when it's somebody who's coming on to talk about their specialty or their thing, I kind of don't like to steer it in that direction.
All right, can you explain one thing to me before we continue? Who is Franks and Beans?
No, Frogs and Beans.
Frogs and Beans?
I don't know,
What's
but
that?
that's our new patron.
We have a $25 a month patron called
Frogs and Beans. Now, there's a different name for the email, but I specifically,
And
like to respect whatever name they put in. And that was the name
fair
they
enough.
put in.
Some
It
people
means
want to do it anonymously.
I'm
which
going
I
to show
understand.
you. I'm going to show you the situation, man. I'm not kidding.
Come on, man.
I'm going to show you, but it's really cool.
Also, big shout out to awesome supporter locally and friend of the show, Mallory McLaren, for becoming a $10 patron.
Yes.
We love you, my friend.
Yes, we do. But this is how it came in. I got the email because I get an email when it says, you have a new patron. And it was, I'm not going to say the name because if they wanted to be known as that, they would put that. So that's what it says.
Cool.
So it's Frogs and Beans.
We're very grateful for it, guys. Very much.
Yes.
So,
And I will be getting my stuff out. You will be getting a Lulu sticker. You will be getting the jersey. Yeah, that's what happens. So things will start being put in motion for you. And Mallory, I might make her come over and get the jersey.
So
I don't know that I'm going to pay for postage, Mallory.
So as you guys know, they did pass the $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill into law. It's actually a very good segue since that was a big part of the conversation with Congressman Newman. And of course,
Yes.
we know that, look, at the end of the day, how much of the $1 trillion is actually going to benefit workers and job creation, that type of thing? I don't know, maybe a quarter of it if you're lucky. But
that's the reality.
If we are able to get, let's just say 250 billion is going to go into the economy over the next
It's a good thing.
year, I guess. I don't know how long it's actually going to last, but if we are able to do anything from an infrastructure standpoint, especially when it comes to transportation, because let's be honest, high-speed rail, that is our best option for reducing our carbon footprint. Obviously, we can talk about the use of, nuclear energy in conjunction with, the clean energy infrastructure that we're looking to build. But if you want to, again, we're not going to have electric airplanes, or at least I don't know how that would happen.
I have some thoughts.
And then, of course, the argument can be made about, what it takes to mine lithium and what that does and how that adversely affects the environment.
I have some thoughts on this.
But if we are able to have high-speed rail, I think that is, in terms of travel and in terms of reducing our carbon footprint, that is as good an option as we've got. And the fact that you have, a lot of people who are really starting to get on board with this, I think is a great, great sign.
Can I say something about this? I have to say something about this. We act like these things are so like pie in the sky.
They're not.
Right? Like other countries actually have these things. That's what's so fascinating to me. We're not talking about investing in the research and development of high-speed rail. We're talking about using technology that exists and other countries are using. Like, it's so strange to me that we treat this like we would be grateful to be able to get the Bright Line from West Palm Beach to Orlando. We don't even have that. And that's not anything so great because it really doesn't go any faster than a car. It's just you don't have to drive. So that is convenient. You could get work done. I mean, I'm not saying there's not a benefit to taking the train. I'm very supportive of the train. But if it's not really going that much faster than driving, I don't know. I just think that we could do better, people. We could do a lot better. So I am very, unfortunately, I am skeptical about what will actually come of this. I think they call things a $1 trillion infrastructure bill when, as somebody who subscribes to modern monetary theory, whatever. And so, okay, they're sitting there and fighting about numbers and nickel and diming with all of these negotiations. But really, at the end of the day, we don't know how it's going to go until we start seeing some on the ground results from where this money goes. And I don't know what that'll look like.
And again, it's an investment. That's the thing, especially when it comes to modern monetary theory. You are not no, it's not true. If you are
you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Okay.
If you are investing, it means you're getting something out of it. It's like, again, this whole idea, and this is where the libertarian side comes in, where what are you spending the money on? Is it waste? Well, no. Investing in infrastructure is not waste. It creates jobs. It puts money into the economy.
Of course.
It's a net positive. It's no different than education. Education, for every dollar invested in education, $7 goes back into the economy.
Same thing with healthcare.
Mm-hmm. So
these are
anybody who tells you
investments,
that
not
this
costs.
is not smart is actually stupid. You know what isn't a good investment? You know what isn't a good investment? Billionaire tax cuts. That's not an investment. That's wasting money.
That's kind of how I feel about like the space race between the billionaires. It's sort of like seriously, like mine's bigger than yours.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're gonna have to let her in.
I will let her in.
Lulu is having to make an entrance. This setup is less than ideal.
She's fashionably late.
She's fashionably late. But we are in the process of converting this space that we have in my new place that will be our studio. And I'm hoping by January, like when we come in after the holiday kind of thing, that we could be in there in one way or another. That's what I think we should have our goal be. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea.
Well, it's going to require manual labor on your part because we're going to have to paint and we're going to have to
provide my manual labor.
You're going to need to provide manual
labor. If we're
labor.
able to do something, if we could have something by Christmas, that would be awesome. If not, we'll do it as quickly as we can.
But anyway, yes. Well, yeah. I mean, that's why I'm saying New Year. We're going to have it done for the New Year and at least get some semblance. I mean, it won't be totally finished, but we could at least get in there. We got the quote on getting the AC put in today, and that's all in motion. So
nice.
It could, there has to be an air conditioning installed. That's the main thing.
So as you guys know, we obviously are big proponents of primaries, especially non-corporate primaries. Of
course.
As we have heard, and again, we all know how ugly things are going to be next year. Well, one surefire seat that was in the Democratic column may not necessarily be so safe because there is a Republican governor in the state of Vermont, and that governor may very well be looking to run for the U.S. Senate because hard to believe, senior senator from Vermont, Patrick Leahy, is finally retiring. How
long has he been in there?
Over 30 years.
Oh, for good God.
Over 30.
And he's not a bad guy.
No, he's not.
I don't have a problem with him.
No, Patrick Leahy overall is a good senator.
Yeah, he's a guy. That's neither here nor there.
He also had a great cameo in The Dark Knight.
I'm trying to think if I saw that.
You remind me of my father.
I don't know that.
I hated my father. So anyway, he is going to retire. And now
you're like movie Rain Man.
Definitely.
You really are. It's like, honestly, it's like
Definitely.
you're like a movie savant. Sometimes it's weird. I don't know how you have all that, and you're busy a lot. So it's like but you see a lot of movies, man.
Well, I have photographic memory, so that also works for me. But nevertheless, Bernie apparently is going to potentially step in and basically put his thumb on the scale for the non-corporate candidate. Now, again,
believe it when I see it.
If he does do that, you have to say, well, is he influencing the democratic process? Look, I would say on the one hand, you could make that argument that you should just let things play out. But on the other hand, Bernie is trying to make sure that whoever is in there is going to continue doing what is necessary to work on behalf of the people. And if you can elect somebody who could potentially be there for a long time, so that way the corporate representative cannot get in there, I understand where Bernie's coming from. And I would certainly, again,
I think it would be highly out of character for him to do so. And I would applaud it. But I have not yet seen him really do something like that.
I don't think Bernie recognizes just how much power and influence he actually has. and what he is capable of doing if he actually wanted to. And so that, I think, in a lot of ways, speaks to his come on, little sweetie, come on.
Just you've got to pick her up from the bum. You
come.
got to pick her up from the bum.
Okay, I'll pick you up, you little munchkin.
She's very particular. I told you, you got to pick her up from the bum.
Come on, you bummy.
There's animal abuse going on.
And now she's hopping around.
She's crazy. You've got to pick her up from the bum. All right, Lulu, come to mommy. Lulu, come to mama. Come on. We'll show him. Come on. You need to get picked up from the bum. Oh, now you banged her head. She doesn't even mind having her head banged, but if you don't pick her up from the bum, she's very delicate. Lulu's very delicate.
Lou sticker. Lou.
This is Lou.
I know you didn't. I know you didn't think I would try to hurt you.
No.
But yeah.
She is delicate.
But
She hurts herself. I've actually heard her cry, and I look at her, and she's just sitting there by herself, like she does something. I don't know. She'll make herself whimper. I can't. What can I tell you?
So it'll be interesting to see if Bernie does decide to wield his power. And
what
you
do
know
you think?
Listen. The second Bernie,
I'd be happy, but
the second Bernie becomes Bernie Heisenberg, that'll be a great day. So we'll see. So a breakthrough in science.
This is cool. It is cool. Wait, go to
big.
the article though, because this one I want to make sure that we get it right. So apparently, the second person has been cured of HIV, and this is really very interesting, and this is coming out of researchers in Argentina. But as the scientists reported Monday, this woman that they're calling Esperanza patient to protect her privacy.
Interesting,
right? So she has appeared to have eradicated the virus from her body without the help of drugs or a bone marrow transplant, which would make her only the second person believed to have cured herself of HIV without drugs or any other treatment. And then of course, this is inspiring. And by the way, this is not from some crazy person. I mean, well, they might be crazy, but they are very credentialed. This is this is the woman from, she's the immunologist at the Ragan Institute of MGH, MIT, and Harvard, and senior author on this new report. And it's based on information out of Argentina, but it's really very interesting. So I just thought, before we get into the boner story of the day, which I can't even bring.
I think ultimately when it comes to, HIV, IBL, I really do think that it's just, modern medicine advances, but it really comes down to, are we talking about the strengthening of our immune system? And if that actually does play a role, your guess is as good as mine, but
I don't know. I just think it's interesting. And I think that it's something that, when I was in high school in the 80s and we were first hearing about AIDS and HIV, that this was something that wasn't even remotely foreseeable. So I don't know. I mean, I looked at that and I thought that's kind of really cool and interesting. And maybe that's a positive thing. I was putting that in there as a positive thing. And again, because now we're going to talk about the lady in the dunce cap. And for those of you who are not watching,
if you haven't seen this video of Lauren Ingram the other night on
Laura Ingram
on the Ingram angle, is that?
I don't watch her nonsense, but I saw the clip of it to which this is referring. So if you can't see our graphic, I have her wearing a dunce cap and then I also have a little picture of Abbott and Costello, because this to me,
this was a who's on first.
It was like who's on first. So
me? You're talking about me?
Right.
No,
so apparently she had a guest or somebody was on her show and they were referencing a publication that is called YOU is the name of the publication. And so he said something along the lines of, well, I saw it on you. And
you saw it on me?
I never. And she's like, what's on me? And he's like, no, on you. And she's like, and so apparently this went on for quite a bit, and it was like an Abbott and Costello routine.
Got to the point where he just could not believe that
how
she was this stupid.
And I want people to understand how far we have fallen from people that is somebody who is on, and again, I don't refer to that as news, but that is somebody on a major media channel that is that obtuse. I find it we have fallen very far.
Oh, we have.
We really have. So
yeah. And that, again, she.
That's a person on a mainstream
and this
channel.
went on for a couple of minutes.
Oh my
like
God.
He was really trying his best to get her to understand
oh my God.
what he was saying.
And I really look, I really do not like to mock people for things that
you can mock Laura Ingram.
Well, it's Laura Ingram, but the
Laura
thing
Ingram,
it's there's no N.
Okay, sorry, Laura.
I'm just saying, be proper. But that to me is just somebody who lacks common sense. Like this isn't a oh well you're just misinformed or you're something like she's an idiot. Like that's I'm sorry, but like that's just yeah. So if and not that anybody who would be watching us would watch that, but if you are one of those viewers, you might want to take note of that.
Yeah, and again, it is you, Laura. Whether you like it or not, it is you. You are that obtuse.
Oh, Elvira, she's on Fox, right?
Yes.
She's on Fox, but go look up on YouTube. Where did I forget who I saw that did a clip on it? Because I didn't watch it. I saw somebody do a clip about it because I don't watch that. But yeah, just look up what we're talking about, and I'm sure you'll find somebody's commentary on it. It's really freaking funny.
Sad, totally sad. Just believe me. Sad.
What do we have coming up?
On Sunday, we are going to be speaking with, I don't want to mess up her name. Let me get this right.
Well, I'll do it. Let's see. Because I'm
you
sometimes you're right, but I'm most often right.
Okay.
Yes.
That makes it easy.
Okay, we have a candidate interview. So it's Ashmi Sheth, Sheth. Where is she a candidate? Do you know where?
Ashmi is running for U.S. Congress in New York's 10th district.
Oh.
She is running against Jerry Nadler.
Oh,
she
yes.
is running in the seat that friend of the show, Lindsey Boylan, had run in previously. Ashmi has raised quite a bit of money already, from what we understand. I believe a few $100,000. So she's doing pretty good.
Nice.
Obviously, has made some good contacts. And, you know, look, Jerry Nadler is another example. Is he the worst representative? No, but he's not somebody I would write home about. And he's been there for over 30 years.
Yeah, it's time to go.
So this is like, again, this is not a lifetime achievement job, as it ends up becoming for so many people.
So we have things coming up here that we're doing. We have some local things going on. If you're local and you want to volunteer. And
one of the guests, we are going to have Jordan Chariton of Status Quo.
Is he coming on Sunday?
He is going to come on Sunday.
Okay.
So we're going to have a conversation, obviously, get an update on obviously what's happened. You know, a lot of you know that he and his longtime partner, Jen Dice, have parted ways. But that doesn't mean that there is any ill will. And we want to emphasize the importance of what Status Quo does.
It makes me a little nervous to have him on. It's kind of like when you're married and you hang out with somebody who gets divorced, that it's like contagious. I feel like if you and I'll end up breaking up, and that would be sad.
Sad, totally sad.
It'd be like the effect in a work relationship. But more importantly, we need to have regular updates from people like Jordan so that we know what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm. So we are, Elvira, we did not talk about the SALT tax. We did talk about the fact that the bill, we talked about the millionaire and the billionaire tax cut. So it is essentially the SALT tax.
We're being very highly suppressed. So also if you're not getting notices and stuff, like we're being very suppressed. That's just the nature of what it is. You guys just have to check. We're pretty consistent. We're pretty consistent. We're really doing our best to be Wednesdays and Sundays.
There's only so much we can do.
Yeah. This week we have fun stuff local. So Friday, what are we doing Friday?
Friday, we are going to be volunteering with one of our local favorites, the Mobile School Pantry, for the Gobble giveaway. That's going to be
it's really cute. And if you guys are local and you want to come out and help. It's at Martin Luther King Elementary School, which is in Fort Lauderdale.
Yes.
And it is, what time do they start? 3:30?
3:15.
3:15. But it goes until like 6 or so, between 6 and 7, really. And any time that you can come is very helpful.
Yes.
And it's a great.
And the weather will be more conducive to Jen's liking.
Correct. The summer months are harsh here.
Summer's hard.
Yeah.
And
so we'll be doing that, and then apparently, next Tuesday, we will be volunteering with local favorite Representative Chevron Jones.
state senator from District 35.
Yep, he's a local favorite.
He is going to be doing a Thanksgiving giveaway in West Park, and we will be there to assist. And so for anybody else who would like to join us for a couple of upcoming events, we would love to have you. And this is all about giving
we
back
will
to
make
the
sure to
community.
put all those details out, right?
Yes.
Since you manage those things.
Yes. Yes.
And so if
I
you
have
are
to handle
local,
that.
please help out. And do we have anything set? Like, what is our plan for Thanksgiving for next week?
We don't have a set plan as of yet. I think we may have a guest lined up, but we'll still be working on it.
I mean, it would be Wednesday. It's Wednesday.
It
night,
will be
obviously,
Wednesday,
but-
the night before the biggest travel day of the year.
Well, yes. And the one day, like, that's the day that I would never travel on, like, ever. Like, you would never find me traveling that day, ever.
Which makes you wonder why everybody does.
It's sort of like you would never find me going to a store the day after Thanksgiving, ever. Like, now, if you see me out the day after Thanksgiving, that's because I'm being chased or something's on fire or I have to evacuate. Like,
BL,
that's
if
the
you're-
only reason.
BL, if you're asking about where is the Gobble giveaway with Mobile School Pantry, that is going to be at MLK Elementary in Lauderhill.
It's not Lauder. Is it considered
Yeah,
Lauderdale?
it's
It's Fort Lauderdale.
It's
It's Fort
Fort
Lauderdale.
Lauderdale,
It's
the
really,
Lauderdale.
it's off of Martin Luther King Boulevard, which is just west of I-95
It's like
and
31st
north of Broward Boulevard.
Yes.
It's pretty much Fort Lauderdale.
Mhm.
MLK Elementary, 3:15 to like 6:15-ish, I would say. Anytime, come help. It's very rewarding.
It's been a fun evening, guys. Very radical conversation. We hope
But
you
who
enjoyed
are
it.
we having on next Wednesday? We have nothing set up. And what are you
I don't
doing
think
for
so.
Thanksgiving?
Going to Jocelyn's. So we really appreciate you all.
I'm not hosting this year, so I am available Wednesday night. Normally, if I'm hosting Thanksgiving, you don't see me starting from Monday.
All right. So
I'm available this week, guys.
We'll have a fun show lined up for you next Wednesday.
Jason's
I can
doing the
assure you.
turkey, but we're not hosting.
I'll make it perky.
Jason does a good turkey.
Uh,
Elon Mush.
no, we didn't talk about him. We had,
Are we supposed to? Is something happening with that?
well,
douche?
because he wanted to know if Bernie was dead or not. You know.
Oh, he's just such a douche. You know what? I'll have to do a upcoming. We haven't had story time in a while,
Yeah.
and we could definitely have something out of the Oligarch Chronicles.
Yeah, let's do that because they came for Bernie. We're going to come for them. So that's how it's going to work.
Well, I mean that we just have to. Yeah.
So get ready for a
we
oligarch.
can have a story time.
We'll have a story time on Sunday for you guys. In the meantime,
You have a good oligarch story time?
Oh yeah. Well,
I mean, because
you-
now that'll be old by then.
no, it's still relevant. Elon wishing death on Bernie.
I don't think he's wishing death.
Yeah.
I think that's a little okay. Now you're being
He was
hyperbolic.
like, "Hey, are you still alive?" That's what.
That's just stupid baiting nonsense. That's like locker room talk. It's stupid.
well,
it's
he's
like,
asking
it's not.
for it. So
He's not really threatening
we're
Bernie.
coming. We're coming for your riches, Mr. Musk. Oh, and if you guys want a good,
That's
laugh,
why they need to get to space because they're not going to be able to build their moats wide enough.
And last thing, if you guys want a good laugh, Beto O'Rourke actually said that he completely stands by his comment of "We're going to take your guns away." Hey guys, good luck lighting your money on fire for that governor's race in Texas. Because
Is he really running for governor there?
is.
And he doubled down on the
He
guns.
sure did. Yeah, sometimes humility is a good thing.
Oh my God.
But he doesn't.
You
have
know
any
what?
of it.
No, but the thing is, it's like I have to laugh. And for anybody who doesn't know, I lived in Texas for 6 years. My older son was born in Texas. I very much like it there. I have a lot of friends there. I have friends that are judges there. It's where I went to law school. And I assure you that nobody is going to be the governor of that state who has threatened to take away people's guns.
Even if you're talking about a
Not
specific
going to
gun,
happen.
doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
And he's not
Like, it's just so ridiculous. Like, that will not happen.
And somebody pointed it out today, and I think it's absolutely true. He had his shot.
Yeah. And
He
the
had
truth is
the
there was
shot.
no there.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. But let me tell you people, Texas is a state where you can shoot somebody on your property, but they can even be facing away from you and you could still get away from it. Like, I'm telling you, you're not taking their guns away.
If he was not able to win in 2018 at the height of the anti-Trump movement against the most hated senator
Ever.
and he outraised him by over $20 million.
He outraised Cruz by $20 million.
And he still lost. Yes, it was
Oh
close.
my
He
God.
lost by about 3 points.
And can we say again, we're talking about Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is the most unpopular senator amongst all senators. So
Now
he
he's
is like that, the pond scum on the algae on the rat.
And this
like,
is the thing that people don't want to talk about, is that in that very same election, when Greg Abbott won re-election for governor, he won re-election by 13 points. You're not making up 10 points against a incumbent governor in a red wave year. If you are
threatening to take away the people's guns,
if you are throwing money at this race,
if you're supporting Beto,
with all due respect, you're a fool.
You're just wasting your money.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
There are so many other better races.
Or be a patron. Be a patron. Instead of donating to Beto O'Rourke's ridiculously futile campaign in Texas, support generational change. Be a patron. Because I do support monthly donations to candidates, but let them be somewhat viable.
I think we're doing good. We got an extra $35 a month. Hey, that adds up, baby.
Let me tell you, be careful, because then they're going to be saying like we're bringing in those 6-figure salaries.
Oh yeah, seriously.
We are. I think we're. It's like
we're not
I seriously
bringing in that
think
much.
Like,
we're not swimming in
it's like $150 a month.
Add another $3,500 a month, and then maybe. But in the
and
meantime,
really, I mean, we basically kind of pay for ourselves. Plus, I have the money to do like homeless packs and stuff like that. But like basically, we're
gonna come up with a great plan.
He has a plan.
Yeah, well, I'm hatching a plan.
But
for
don't
Christmas.
name it yet, and don't name it yet.
Not naming it,
because we're gonna have to talk about that. It's not about Christmas.
What's about the holidays?
We'll come up with something creative that's like our thing. We're gonna have it'll be our own Festivus
for the rest of us.
It'll be a generational Festivus for the rest of us.
What day does it fall on? Let's figure that out.
Well, I have to be having. Okay, hold on.
When does Festivus fall? Does it fall on a Thursday? No, it's a Tuesday. It is a Thursday.
Well, this is okay.
Winter solstice.
I'm hosting. Okay, I'm convening my circle of women. And a friend of mine who is also my Pilates instructor is pregnant, and it's her first baby. And I am convening the circle, and we are going to she's having a shower like with her family stuff, but we're going to be having a winter solstice shower for her. There are certain rituals that must be brought into play.
Will you get pictures from that event?
I don't know. That's a secret. That's like a sacred thing. It's like a very red tent for any women who are like, if you're into that, like it's a very.
Yes, I know about the red tent.
Love the red tent.
Well aware.
No, you're thinking about those red hat women.
No, I know about red tent.
What's red? What is the red tent?
It's like birthing kind of.
Okay, well that obviously there's an organization called that, but it's named after a book called The Red Tent, which is based on biblical fiction about women. And anyway, so I'm having solstice. So that night we're not doing anything. So I don't know when you would, but
the 22nd. Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday the 22nd will be whatever it is that we're doing.
We'll plan it out.
We'll do something cool, and maybe we'll get some guests. It'll depend on how busy people are that week.
Very true.
Because that's kind of a crazy week, guys.
So with that said, we love you. We appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight, and we will see you.